My name is Lena Whitaker, and until this morning, I thought I understood what family meant. I'm 72, a retired school librarian, the kind of woman who still folds napkins into triangles and keeps lavender in every drawer. My house on Maple Glen Street has been my safe corner of the world for 46 years. That was before my son threw my wedding picture out the window. The frame hit the grass with a dull crack. I watched shards of glass catch the sunlight like tiny knives. My daughter-in-law, Cass, clapped her hands and laughed, a sharp, delighted sound that didn't belong in my home. Joel, my son, stood beside her, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the floor. "Mom, please don't make this harder," he muttered. Harder? The word tasted like iron. My hands trembled, but I didn't bend to pick up the frame. Not yet. The wind brushed past the curtains, carrying the faint scent of lavender and something burnt. Maybe the toast I'd forgotten in the kitchen. Maybe the last thread of peace in this house. I straightened my back. "I think you've done enough," I said quietly. My voice didn't shake. Then the doorbell rang. Once, twice. The sound cut through the air like a heartbeat. Cass stopped laughing. Joel looked up. I walked to the door, wiped the blood from my palm where the glass had nicked me, and opened it. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid. The doorbell's echo faded into the hum of cicadas outside. I didn't move right away. Cass's voice drifted from behind me, sharp and impatient. "Are you seriously going to answer that?" I ignored her. My fingers brushed the wooden edge of the table by the door. The same table my husband, Walter, built from oak the year Joel was born. The surface was smooth from years of polish and use, but now the finish was flecked with dust, and the sunlight through the curtains made every particle shimmer like proof of neglect. Walter would have hated this mess. Joel used to help him sand furniture in the garage, covered in sawdust and smiles, but that was a long time ago. Before Walter's heart gave out on a spring morning, before I learned how loneliness can echo louder than laughter. When Joel and Cass moved in last year, I thought it would fill the silence. They said it was temporary. Just until we get back on our feet. I wanted to believe them. I made space, cooked their dinners, and learned to share the bathroom again after decades alone. But little cracks started to show. The way Cass rolled her eyes when I asked about her day, the way Joel flinched when she snapped at him in front of me. Then came the whispers about my memory. "She left the oven on again," Cass would say, though I hadn't. "She forgot to pay the water bill, though I'd mailed it the day before." At first, I thought she was simply forgetful. Then I realized she was building a story, one where I was fragile, confused, and in need of being managed. That word still makes my skin crawl. One evening, I overheard her telling Joel, if we can move her into assisted living, we could finally sell this place. I stood in the hallway, holding a laundry basket, frozen between anger and disbelief. I waited for my son to correct her, to remind her this was my house, the home where he learned to ride his bike, the place Walter and I built together brick by brick. He didn't say a word. After that night, I stopped leaving my mail on the counter. I locked the cabinet where I kept my documents, and I started writing down every word Cass said to me, not out of paranoia, but out of instinct. I could feel something coming, like thunder rumbling far away. Now, with glass shards on my floor and blood drying on my hand, I realized the storm had finally arrived. I took a deep breath, looked back at Joel's shadow in the hallway, and whispered to myself, no one's managing me ever again. Outside, a car engine stopped. Tires crunched on the driveway gravel. The person behind that doorbell was still waiting. The knock came harder this time, 3 sharp raps that made the window glass tremble. Cass sighed loudly behind me. "It's probably another one of your church friends dropping off muffins," she said, rolling her eyes. "You should really tell them you're moving soon. They'll miss your little tea parties." I turned the knob before she could finish. The sunlight hit my face, and I squinted to see the figure on the porch. But there was no one there. Just the wind pushing the screen door and a car pulling away down the street. I stepped outside anyway. The air smelled like cut grass and summer dust. My neighbor, Mr. Patel, was watering his hydrangeas across the yard. He waved politely, then frowned when he noticed the broken frame in the grass. "Everything all right, Mrs. Whitaker?" he called out. Before I could answer, Cass appeared behind me, voice sweet but strained. "She's fine, just having one of her moments." Her words snapped through me like a whip. "Mr. Patel hesitated, then nodded awkwardly and went back to his hose. I bent down, picked up the photograph, the edges damp with dew, and brushed off the dirt. My thumb traced Walter's face. He was smiling, one hand on my shoulder. The glass was gone, but the image survived. I held it tight. Cass crossed her arms. "You can't keep hoarding all this junk. Joel and I need space if we're going to make this house livable." I looked past her into the doorway. Boxes were stacked everywhere, labeled with my name: Mom's clothes, Mom's dishes, Mom's stuff. Joel stood there, silent again. His shoulders slumped, the way they used to when he got caught lying as a kid. I almost pitied him. Almost. "You're packing the wrong boxes," I said softly. Cass let out a short laugh. "Oh, please. You've had your time here. You don't even remember half the people in this neighborhood anymore." I didn't raise my voice. I just stepped closer until our eyes met. "I remember enough to know you don't belong in this house." For a heartbeat, everything went still. The air, the cicadas, even the water from Mr. Patel's hose seemed to pause mid-air. Then Cass reached for the box marked Mom's dishes and pushed it toward the open window. China shattered against the driveway like gunfire. Joel flinched. That was the moment Mr. Patel started recording. I didn't know it yet, but that video, the one he filmed from across the fence, would end up saving me. Cass turned back with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We're cleaning up, Lena. You should start packing your bags." I took a step back into the sunlight, my heart steady, my decision forming. If they were going to throw me out, they'd better be ready for what came next. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the floorboard upstairs felt like a reminder that my own house no longer belonged to me. Joel and Cass laughed faintly through the vents, their voices blending with the sound of the TV. I sat in my chair by the window, the wedding photo lying face down on the table. At some point, the clock struck 2. I stared at the reflection of my porch light on the glass and whispered, "Enough." By morning, I already knew what I had to do. I called Calvin, my younger brother, the one person who never treated me like I was fragile. When Walter passed, Calvin showed up in his old fire department jacket, handed me a thermos of coffee, and said, "You're still the captain of your own ship, Lena." I needed that version of him again. He answered on the second ring. "Hey, big sis, you sound like you didn't sleep." "I didn't," I said. "Can you meet me at the Bluebird Diner?" "Of course," he said. "Do I need to bring my jacket?" I smiled despite myself. "Just your brain, and maybe your calm." The diner smelled like burnt toast and coffee, comfort and memory in equal measure. I got there first, ordered chicken soup I barely touched. Calvin arrived a few minutes later, pulling off his cap and studying my face before sitting down. "What happened?" he asked quietly. I told him. Everything. The laughter, the broken dishes, the way Joel's eyes slid away from mine. Calvin listened, fingers laced together on the table. When I finished, he didn't raise his voice or curse, just nodded once. "Okay," he said. "We do this right. No yelling, no throwing back. You call a lawyer, someone who knows elder law. You keep notes, keep calm, and let the system work for you. You're not leaving that house. Lena." I looked out the window. Across the street, a couple walked a golden retriever, moving slow and easy, as if nothing in the world could turn their morning upside down. I envied them for a second, then felt something stronger. Resolve. Calvin paid the bill, even though I tried to. "You can leave the tip," he said with a wink. When we stood to go, I felt taller somehow. The fear that had been eating at me all week had turned into something else, something steadier, heavier, like armor. As we stepped into the sunlight, I said, "I'm calling the lawyer today." Calvin nodded. "Good, call me when she's done making them nervous." That afternoon, I met Helen Brooks, an attorney who specialized in protecting seniors. She listened the way teachers used to listen to scared children, patient, steady. "We'll start with proof of ownership," she said, "and then, if they touch another thing, we'll make sure the law touches them back." For the first time in months, I slept soundly that night. By the next afternoon, the house was silent in that strange, loaded way before a storm. Helen, my lawyer, was due any minute, and Calvin said he'd meet her here. I brewed coffee, not for comfort, but to keep my hands busy. My fingers shook slightly when I set the mugs down. Through the front window, I saw Joel's car parked crooked in the driveway. He was home early from work, which meant Cass wasn't far behind. The universe must have perfect timing, because as their car doors slammed, a silver sedan pulled up right behind them. Helen stepped out, briefcase in hand, calm as a surgeon. Cass's face pinched immediately. "Who's this?" she asked. Eyeing Helen like she was an intruder, Helen extended a hand, professional and steady. "Helen Brooks, attorney for Mrs. Whitaker." The words hit the air like the first clap of thunder. Joel blinked. "Mom, you got a lawyer?" "Yes," I said, standing on the porch. "And she's here to make sure nobody throws anything else out the window." Cass laughed, but it was brittle. "You're seriously going through all this drama? You're not thinking straight." Helen flipped open her folder, pulling out a printed document. "Actually, she's thinking very clearly. This," she said, handing the paper to Joel, "is proof of property ownership. The deed is in her name. And this," she placed another page on top, "is a notice for you both to vacate her residence within 30 days. You're guests, not co-owners." Cass's color drained. "You can't just—" "Yes, I can," I said quietly, right then. The sound of footsteps approached from the driveway. Calvin had arrived, wearing his old fire department jacket, sleeves rolled up. He wasn't smiling. "You should both listen to her," he said. "She knows what she's doing." Cass crossed her arms. "You think showing up with a lawyer and your brother's little rescue team makes you look strong? This is pathetic." Helen didn't flinch. "Mrs. Whitaker has also filed a report with Adult Protective Services. The video recorded by your neighbor, Mr. Patel, will serve as supporting evidence. The footage clearly shows you destroying her property while she stood nearby. That's considered elder abuse under state law." Joel swallowed hard. Elder abuse. Helen met his eyes. "If this continues, yes, but you can still do the right thing." Cass turned to him, panic creeping into her voice. "You're not seriously letting her scare us?" Before she could finish, a police cruiser rolled up the street. The blue lights reflected off the windows, soft and rhythmic. A woman officer stepped out, body camera blinking red. "Afternoon," she said politely. "We got a welfare check request from this address. Everything all right here?" I took a breath. "Yes, officer. It will be—" The officer nodded and glanced at Helen. "You the attorney?" "Yes," Helen said. "My client's asserting her rights as the homeowner. No immediate danger, but there's been harassment." The officer's eyes softened when she looked at me. "Ma'am, you're safe here. If anyone gives you trouble, you call us directly." Cass muttered something under her breath and stomped toward the car. Joel followed her, slow and dazed. At the bottom of the porch steps, Cass spun around. "You'll regret this," she hissed. I looked down at her, the same woman who'd laughed while my memories shattered across the driveway, and said, "No, I'm finally not the one who should—" She glared, climbed into the car, and slammed the door. The tires squealed, spitting dust down Maple Glen Street. For a moment, the world went quiet again. Calvin put his hand on my shoulder. "You did good, Lena." I didn't feel victorious, not yet, just steady. For the first time in months, I was standing on solid ground, my own porch, and that, I realized, was the line. After the police car pulled away, the quiet that followed wasn't peaceful. It was hollow. I could still smell the dust from Cass's tires, still hear her voice echoing in my head. Helen stayed a little longer, sitting with me at the kitchen table. "They'll cool off," she said, "but we'll do this the right way. No rushed deadlines, no drama, just law." Her calm steadied me. She slid a copy of the deed across the table. Then another paper. "This is the notice we filed. You've got 30 days on record, backed by APS and law enforcement presence. If they return or harass you again, you call me first, the police second." I nodded. "I don't want them arrested," I said softly. "I just want my house back." "That's exactly what we'll do," she said. When she left, the afternoon sun poured through the curtains, warm against the old wallpaper. I'd spent years polishing this kitchen, and now every corner seemed to breathe again. That night, I replaced the broken glass in my wedding photo. I didn't have the original frame anymore, but I found one Walter had built years ago for a church raffle. Simple oak, clean lines. I set it on the mantel, just above the coffee table where Cass once piled her moving boxes. 2 days later, Officer Collins, the same woman from the welfare check, stopped by again. "Just checking in," she said. "Got a call from APS. Everything moving forward?" "Yes," I told her. "I've got paperwork and my brother's helping me change the locks." Calvin arrived soon after, toolbox in hand. "You sure about this?" he asked. "Absolutely." We spent the afternoon replacing the locks on every door and window. I paid for the new hardware myself, card, not cash. Calvin handed me the last screw, smiling faintly. "You've still got that look," he said. "The one you had the day you learned to drive stick." I laughed, a little hoarse. That was fear back then. And this? Resolve. By evening, I made tea and sat on the porch while the cicadas started their nightly song. The porch light glowed against the twilight, brighter than I remembered, inside. The house was mine again, quiet, orderly, breathing. There were still forms to sign, hearings to attend, things to settle. But the panic was gone. In its place was something steady and clean, not revenge, just order. And that, I realized, was enough for now. The house smelled like fresh paint and lemon polish again. It was strange how quickly a place could heal when you stopped letting chaos live in it. I spent the next week putting things back where they belonged. The curtains got washed, the porch floor repainted, The lavender plants trimmed just enough to bloom again. There was a peace in the small routines, watering the flowers, folding laundry, reading in the afternoon light. Calvin stopped by often, mostly to check if I was eating right, though he pretended he came for my coffee. "You finally made this place yours again," he said one morning, leaning against the doorway. "It always was mine," I answered. "I just forgot to act like it." He smiled, proud but quiet. A letter came in the mail a few days later. It was from APS, confirmation that the report was closed, and that no further action was needed since I was safe and in full control of my property. It was official. The matter was over. That night, I stood in the living room, staring at the blank wall where the wedding photo used to hang. The new oak frame leaned against the chair. The picture inside looked older now, not because of time, but because of everything that had happened since. Walter's smile seemed to ask a question. "What will you do next?" So I answered him. I took a hammer and a single nail, centered the frame above the mantel, and hung it back up. The photo caught the evening light, soft and golden. For a moment, it looked like the sun was setting inside it. I whispered, "We're home again. Walt." The next morning, I started volunteering at the senior center downtown, just 2 mornings a week, helping sort books and teach basic computer skills. It felt good to be useful again, not out of obligation, but choice. One afternoon, as I was closing up the center, the receptionist handed me an envelope. "Someone dropped this off for you," she said. It was Joel's handwriting. Inside was a letter, short and shaky. "Mom, I'm sorry. I should have stopped her. I let fear run the house instead of love. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I'm trying to be better. I've started volunteering with Meals on Wheels, bringing dinners to seniors. Maybe that's a start. Love, Joel." I read it twice, then folded it neatly and slipped it into my purse. There was no flood of tears, no dramatic forgiveness, just a quiet understanding that maybe, someday, we'd find our way back. That night, I brewed chamomile tea and sat on the porch, watching the lights flicker in the houses down Maple Glen. The air felt cleaner somehow, not because the storm had passed, but because I had survived it without losing myself. The picture inside shimmered through the window, steady and still. Sometimes healing isn't loud. It's just the sound of your own house breathing again. A few weeks later, the air turned crisp, and the maples along the street began to flame red. Autumn had always been Walter's favorite season. He used to say fall wasn't about dying. It was about letting go of what had already served its purpose. I thought about that as I sat on the porch, a soft blanket around my shoulders and a mug of coffee warming my hands. The porch had become my sanctuary again. No arguments, no slammed doors, just the rhythm of wind through the leaves. When Joel's car pulled up to the curb, I didn't move. He sat there for a long moment before finally stepping out. His shoulders looked heavier than I remembered. He walked up the path slowly, as if the house itself might reject him. "Hi, Mom," he said. His voice was careful, like someone walking on thin ice. "Hi, Joel." He handed me a small paper bag. Inside was a jar of lavender honey from the farmer's market, the same kind Walter used to buy every fall. "I didn't come to talk about the house," he said. "I just wanted to see how you were doing." I studied him for a while. The boy who used to chase fireflies on this very lawn, the man who'd once looked away when I needed him most. But in his eyes, there was something I hadn't seen in years. Humility. "I'm all right," I said softly. "And I'm glad you're trying." He nodded, emotion catching in his throat. "You deserved better from me." I reached out, touched his hand lightly. What matters now is what you do next." We didn't say much after that. He sat beside me, and for a few minutes, we just listened to the sound of leaves scraping across the porch floor. Ordinary, grounding, alive. When he left, the sun had already dipped low, spilling gold over the porch rail. I stood there for a long while, watching the light fade. Sometimes, peace doesn't come in grand gestures. It comes in the quiet after the storm, when you've reclaimed what was yours, not out of anger, but out of respect for yourself, because kindness without boundaries isn't kindness at all. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy these family drama and revenge stories, please subscribe and join me for more every day.